Thank you very much for attending our presentation. And our presentation is named UbootKit. It's a warm attack for the bootloader of IoT devices. And my name is Jingyu, and this is my colleague. This is my colleague Chen. We're both from the Tencent. And I worked for the Tencent antivirus laboratory, and this is my second time to here as Black Hat Asia. And last year, I brought my open source project as the Asana project, Harbor Malhunter. My main interest is about the malware analysis. And this year, we do some IoT security research. So, and Chen, can you talk about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Geng Chen, work for Tencent. My job is mainly malware analysis. It's my pleasure to attend the conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please let me to introduce the outline of the presentation. And firstly, I would like to introduce the concept of the UbootKit, then the attack vector analysis. About the all layers will be discussed, following the reason why the related prevention mechanisms fail to defend the U-boot attack. In the next, Mr. Geng will introduction the implementation of the UbootKit in detail, and followed a demo then will be played. Then, considering the huge impact of the UbootKit, we developed a mitigation solution. It's an integrity verification method that at the on-chip code level, and at the end, we will make a short conclusion about the UbootKit. Firstly, the name UbootKit is from the concepts of the U-boot, it is a bootloader, and the rootkit. Firstly, the UbootKit attack is a kind of a manipulation attack for the bootloader. The worm will rewrite the bootloader, and then the method code exists in the bootloader will be executed. After rebooting, the malicious code will hijack the process of the Linux starting in the memory, and then the worm body will be downloaded and executed with the root privilege. Finally, the downloaded program will attack other devices through the password brute force attack and or the remote code execution attack. The following features make U-boot is distinguished from other bootloader attacks. Firstly, UbootKit is able to propagate without physical access. Then the infected IoT devices will be work normally, but have been controlled by the attacker remotely. More importantly, UbootKit is difficult to be cleaned, even by pressing the reset button physically. And this slide, we will introduce some general features of the UbootKit. Regarding the suitability analysis, UbootKit is able to infect a variety type of IoT devices, including ARM and MIPS architectures. And no matter it is whether a webcam or Soho router, UbootKit is also not limited to particular version of U-boot and the Linux kernel. What's more, the concept of the attack is also suitable for another bootloader and other embedded operating systems. The impact of the UbootKit is significant because the bootloader layer is the closest layer to the hardware among all soft layers, such as the Linux kernel and the file system. In this case, the malicious code in bootloader will obtain more powerful abilities than the programs in the Linux kernel or the user mode space. And definitely, the worm will obtain a root privilege once it affects a new device. Finally, the elimination difficulty. Finally, UbootKit is difficult to be cleaned because once it persists in the bootloader, the worm will be executed before the Linux kernel or any program in the user space, which is a huge advantage for the UbootKit in the battle against the antivirus program. Later, we will explain why the UbootKit will not be eliminated by the physically pressing the reset button. This slide, a standard start process of an IoT device will be introduced. And firstly, there is a small piece of room code in the CPU, which is usually less than 20 kilobytes, will be executed firstly when the device is powered on. The main function of the on-chip code is to decide boot model from the system boot configuration pin. It's a physical pin. Second step, the CPU will execute the bootloader from the bootable device, no matter the NOR or USB device or the serial device or from the network. And when mainly consider the bootable device as a flash chip, U-boot responds to decompress the Linux kernel and then will press the parameters for the Linux kernel, such as the root file system and the kernel parameters. Finally, UbootKit will transfer the control, the right of the control, to the Linux kernel. The prototype we developed will focus on the U-boot and the Linux, since they are major in the IoT device environment. Though a few IoT devices may support other operating systems such as the VxWorks or the NetBSD or FreeBSD and some other RTOS. The Linux kernel, the second step, the Linux kernel will initialize some hardware at the beginning, and then in the function init post, the kernel will start the first user space program by calling the run init process with a parameter like etc init. The execution flow will jump to the user space mode from the kernel space at that time. And we will talk about why we choose this function as the target of the hijaction. The first steps, the final steps, when the first user space process etc init is launched, it will press the init table file in the etc directory. Then the script file init.d rcs will be executed. It's a bash script file. The actions on the script file usually about the network service. These 4 steps are about typical ARM-based IoT devices, but it is also adapted for the MIPS structure, except the major instructions is totally different. Okay, next steps. In these steps, techniques used in UbootKit will be discussed. Firstly, in the IoT device, the room flash can be updated. The design is mainly used for the firmware updating, following with the Linux kernel and the file system. However, the bootloader exists at the beginning of the flash chip, and it is possible to rewrite the bootloader by the mtd write tools. Secondly, a piece of malicious code can be injected by the modifying the bootloader. And as we talked before, the best opportunity exists after the U-boot decompress the Linux kernel in the memory and before the U-boot transfers the control to the Linux kernel. Thirdly, according to the execution orders from the Linux kernel starting process, the init post function is the best place to be inline hooked for the following malicious actions. And finally, the file etc init.d rcs is an auto-run shell script file. The malicious shell script will be firstly detected. Which kind of the CPU the device used, and by reading the file proc CPU info, and then decide, for example, if it is an ARM device, and it will download the corresponding binary EF file to do the further attacks. Next is very interesting. I think it's the most features in our UbootKit attacks. As we know, many security methods have already been adapted for the IoT devices. But this time, why they failed? In this slide, we will talk about how to bypass this related method. Firstly, offensive feature of UbootKit is that it will not be removed by pressing the reset button. And why? The reset button is a method for rolling back the device into an original factory mode. Then the reset button is, when the reset button is pressed, a few seconds, 1, 2, 3, the corresponding hardware handler interruption handler will be called. Then the partition that stores the user configurations information in the file system will be formatted. So in the next, the device is rebooted, or the file is totally original. However, normal handler will not touch the beginning of the flash chip, where is the bootloader exists. Consequently, the UbootKit cannot be removed in this way. Secondly, basically, U-boot supports some checksum verification method, such as the CLC checksum. And some advanced U-boot can even support the RSA signature verification. However, UbootKit also can bypass this security method because UbootKit attacks directly to the content in the memory, the Linux kernel content in the memory. We can use the two methods to bypass this security verification. Firstly, the malicious code in Bootloader can be override the verification process and always return true. And secondly, we modified the content of the Linux kernel in memory, and this time is just after the verification procedure instead of the time the verification procedure to check the content in the room flash. Thirdly, the Linux system provides access protection for the room flash. If the file is not marked as MTD bits writable, the write action will be failed. However, the two named like the flash unlock tools will unlock the device by calling the I/O control system call. The flash chip also provides some mechanism called the lock instructions for the write protection. However, unlock instruction is also provided and free to be called. This write protection method only prevents the unintentional mistakes instead of the intentional attacks. Okay, and in the next, Mr. Geng will share his experience on the implementation of the UbootKit. And thank you.
Now let me introduce the implementation of the UbootKit. The workflow of UbootKit comprises three main stages: intrusion, infection, and propagation. I will focus on the infection stage. The object of intrusion stage is to obtain the root privilege in the targeting device. The worm will use multiple methods, such as password scanning or remote code execution exploits to achieve the goal. The intrusion component will be executed not only when the first time that attack releases the worm, but also when the worm itself to attack other devices during the propagation stage. In the infection stage, we chose relink RT5350 SOC, and the U-boot version is relink 4.1.2.0. Linux kernel version is 2.6.21. This picture shows the IoT device startup process. First, I describe the standard startup process. In the U-boot stage, after series of hardware initialized, do-boot function will be called. In this function, U-boot will judge whether to decompress the kernel based on the U-image header. In relink RT5350, Linux kernel is compressed by LZMA. After decompression, U-boot will transfer control to the Linux kernel. At this point, Linux kernel is fully decompressed in the memory. The Linux kernel will initialize hardware at first, then will execute the function start kernel. Following with IEST init to create kernel thread. The kernel thread will execute the function init. At the end of init post will be called, and in this function, the kernel will start the first user space process by calling run init process. The execution flow will jump to the user space from the kernel space after that. This is the standard IoT device startup process. Next, let me introduce how to inject malicious code to the bootloader and finally complete the attack. The best opportunity exists after the U-boot decompresses the Linux kernel in the memory and before the U-boot transfers the control to the kernel. The following assembly code shows how UbootKit modifies instructions that originally point to the function print in order to change the execution flow to the malicious shellcode. When U-boot execution flow is redirected to the malicious shellcode, UbootKit obtains the control of the CPU. In order to control the host device entirely, the malicious shellcode will be divided into 4 steps. The first inline hook init post in kernel. In order to modify the file system, UbootKit plans to inject a kernel patch into the memory. As mentioned in the attack vector analysis section, init post is the best place to be inline hooked. A few instructions at the beginning of init post will be modified as jump instructions to the next kernel patch code. The second, inject kernel patch. The kernel patch will be placed in a function named TOTM. Since it is never called during start process, this picture shows the modified TOTM function. The kernel patch will apply file I/O system calls to append lines of shell script to the end of the auto-run file etc init.drcs. Regarding the particular Linux system that RT5350 used, the name of the auto-run file is etc.roccs. The third, copy parameters. Parameters such as file name and content, which are used in I/O syscall in the previous step, will be constructed in the kernel memory. This picture shows the content appended to the end of auto-run file. A technical problem is that when etc.roccs works, the network interface has not been configured yet. As a result, a download command is not suitable to be appended directly to the end of auto-run script file. In this case, the shell scripts will append the download command to the file sbrninternet.sh, which is a network configuration shell script file. The fourth, return to the original path. After a series of precise modification, UbootKit needs to return the original path. Now, UbootKit has controlled and infected the device. Before jump to the user space, the init post will call the modified TOTM function. Traditionally, when creating a bootable kernel image, the kernel is also compressed using gzip bzip2, which requires a very small decompression step to be included in the resulting image. Therefore, when modify the print in the do-bootime Linux function, Linux kernel date is not extracted to the memory. In order to patch the Linux kernel, call kernel function, which is an entry point from the compression stage to the kernel, is the best opportunity. A few instructions at the beginning of call kernel will be modified as jump instruction to the shellcode. The following process is the same as before. After infection stage, UbootKit has controlled and infects the host device. Firstly, it will enumerate IP address in both LAN and WAN, then use fingerprint to detect ideal IoT device via telnet or SSH. Secondly, if UbootKit gains the root privilege of the victim device, it will download the worm file from the C&C server. Not only the password scanning, the worm will apply multiple intrusion technologies which have been described in the intrusion stage. Finally, the new infected device will repeat the above stages to attack as much as IoT device it can.
And after talking about the design and the implementation of the UbootKit, we would like to play a short video to demonstrate how UbootKit propagates between different IoT devices. Okay, and we choose the 3 devices in the same network. And firstly, we would like to demonstrate how to intrusion and infection the device. Firstly, we use the default password like root or root admin to intrude a demo device. And then, as an attacker, we will download the worm, the EF worm, by the TFTP command from the command and control server. And we change the executable, we change the file as executable, and then execute the worm. After that, the U-boot malware will be executed, and it will modify the bootloader, and then reboot the device. And when the bootloader compresses the Linux kernel, and we will inline hook the Linux kernel. And then the auto-run bash script file will be modified by the UbootKit. And then the UbootKit will scan the other nodes at the same network. Yeah, and after this demonstration, we will show how it is difficult to eliminate. Well, and we would like to show some evidence that this device is infected by the UbootKit. Firstly, it's an auto-run bash script. And we can find some evidence the file has been modified. And then we would like to remove all of them, just like the user pressing the reset button and delete all of the files. And remove them all. And also remove the etc autorun bash script, RCS. And also remove the internet.sh. Okay, we reboot the device. And guess what happened in next? Whether the malware will still exist or it will be removed, and we will see. One, two, three. Unfortunately, the UbootKit has never been removed, cannot be removed. Okay, after demonstrates the elimination difficulty, and the fourth demo will be talk about the propagation between one device to another at the same network. Oh, this video will show the evidence that this device has been infected. After we delete all the files in these devices. It's so difficult to be removed. And then we design a demonstration about how to propagate the UbootKit from one device to another. Firstly, on the top right device is named COM3 because we connected it from the serial port COM3. And on the lower left is named COM6. And on the lower left is named COM5. Okay, firstly, we reboot the COM3 device and wish the UbootKit will scan all the networks and find some vulnerable device and then attacks it. The target will be COM6 on the lower left, on the lower right. Okay, the UbootKit finds the target and will use the telnet protocol and to try the password of the admin user, which is easy. It's also admin. And then the COM6 device has been infected and then rebooted. Okay, when the autorun bash script is executed, the UbootKit will be downloaded and executed automatically. Okay, the UbootKit has been launched. And during the propagation, no physical access is needed and no manually action will be done. Then the COM6 device will infect the COM5 device. also by the network scanning and brute force telnet protocol. Okay, and we will show the evidence that it is infected. And after it rebooted, this device is also infected. And the auto-run file in the COM5 device is also being modified with a malicious code. After all, 3 of the devices in the same network is successfully being infected by the UbootKit. Okay, and that's the demonstration. Okay, let's continue to talk about the mitigation method. As a prototype, we developed and demonstrates non-security prevention methods failed to stop the attack of the UbootKit. In order to mitigate the UbootKit, a proposal about how to detect and respond to this kind of the attack is explained in this slide. And firstly, we design an on-chip code verification method. The new security method should be implemented at the on-chip code before the infected bootloader is executed. When the IoT device is powered on, the on-chip code will firstly calculate the content of the original bootloader, and then it will store the hash value to flash in the CPU inside, and the hash algorithm could be picked from the CRC32 or SHA1 or more advanced SHA256. But SHA256 is recommended since it has not been cracked ever. Okay, at the same time, the hash value is stored in the room flash inside the CPU. And the next time, the stored value will be compared with the calculated value. If they are the same, they are equal, which means that the integrity of the bootloader has not been compromised. The stored value is the original one. The boot process will be continued. But however, the content of the bootloader has been altered. The IoT device should respond to this modification and usually helps to stop and in order to avoid the propagation of the worm attack. And then we will discuss the advantages of this method. Firstly, the method is easy to be implemented among all kinds of CPU, and because we talk about the embedded device, a hash algorithm and a few byte space for the hash value is acceptable for resources restricted CPU. Secondly, compared with a complexity public key cryptography-based signature verification method, a simple solution is more likely to be accepted by the most IoT vendors considering the money. But last but not least, the content bootloader is designed to be immutable. So the proposed method applies the smallest modification to achieve the security on integrity, though losing the ability to update the bootloader. But yeah, it's a balanced decision. Next, not the IoT device are vulnerable to the bootloader attacks, but also the PC and Mac. In this slide, we will call back the related bootloader and IoT attacks. Firstly, does anyone remember the famous CIH virus? The CIH virus first emerged in 1998. It was the first virus that attacks a certain type of BIOS. The virus wrote the chunk data into the BIOS through the out instruction. And as a result, infected PC will not be able to work. And second, the hacker team. The hacking team was exposed to have developed a UEFI-based rootkit. The rootkit is able to infect the UEFI firmware, which is the next generation BIOS. However, the attacker needs physical access, such as a USB disk, to launch the attack. But the UbootKit does not rely on physical access. Mirai was the first worldwide IoT malware that infected IoT devices by password scanning and launched large-scale distributed denial-of-service attacks to high-profile targets. However, Mirai can be cleaned by updating the firmware, which means if you press the reset button, the Mirai virus will be removed. But as we demonstrated, the UbootKit will not be eliminated by pressing the reset button. Finally, the breaker boot. Breaker boot attack was aiming to destroy IoT devices by overwriting the bootloader with junk data. Compared with the UbootKit, breaker boot is a kind of denial-of-service attack, and the infected IoT device will no longer be able to work. So, the UbootKit is an evolutionary attack comparing with the previous attacks. UbootKit is able to propagate without physical access, and the infected IoT device still work normally, but have been controlled remotely by the attackers. Again, UbootKit is difficult to be eliminated, even by pressing the reset button. Okay, and we think the battle of antivirus will never stop. After UbootKit prototype has been developed, many challenges are still waiting to be captured. Firstly, regarding the offensive aspect, more self-protection technology, such as how to stop refresh the bootloader and how to hide the malicious code in the bootloader without being detected, should be developed. And oppositely, regarding the defense aspect, we will continue to promote the on-chip code integrity verification solution to the other IC industry, to the other vendors in the IC industry. Although UbootKit is extremely difficult to be cleaned, other methods are still able to help. For example, never use weak password. and default password. And we found some device use a very difficult and long and random password. However, they apply this same password to every devices they produced. That's also a bad decision. And security firewall and IPS could stop most known remote code execution exploits the attack. Also, monitoring the file system is able to detect the access to bootloader. And all this work will provide a secure IoT environment. Okay, finally, we reach the conclusion part. A long history for bootloader attack exists in the battlefield of the antivirus area. However, UbootKit is the first complete worm attack targeting the bootloader of IoT device. And the attack process without adaptation, huge impact, and it is difficult to be eliminated. The attack, today we introduce the attack. Today we introduce the attack vector that UbootKit used and the implementation of the prototype. As demonstration indicates that UbootKit is able to infect variable kinds of IoT devices. In the end, a mitigation solution is proposed to counter UbootKit. And we hope our work will inspire the audience to find more vulnerability of IoT devices and make IoT environment secure in the future. Okay, and please give me a few seconds to let me introduce all authors of our paper. And the team members come from the Tencent and Princeton University. And all the references are attached for your review. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. And any question, please?
Okay. What device did you use? On what device did you use your UbootKit? And how difficult it will be to attack another device, to adopt your exploit to another device, your UbootKit?
Okay, and the question is how difficult the UbootKit will attack other devices, right? So the difficulty depends on whether the attack process can obtain the root privilege. Because the key point is the UbootKit needs root privilege to flash the MTD partition in the flash shape. So if the attack process can use the vulnerability such as the password brute force attack, it can easily get the root privilege. But more and more devices change the password, and it's difficult to get the right one. So you may apply a remote execute exploit or some default backdoor you can find on the devices. Okay. And next question, please. Okay, and the question is whether refresh the firmware can eliminate the UbootKit, and the answer is no. And because we demonstrate and we do some experiments, we found the layout of the room chip is at the beginning of the chip is a bootloader, and followed by the Linux kernel, and then followed by the file system. Normally, a firmware contains the Linux kernel and the file system. However, the firmware does not contain the bootloader. So if you flash the firmware, it will not touch the bootloader content. So the answer is no. Thank you. Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And when I propose this situation, I consider the why we use the second two steps. Firstly, we calculate the hash value at the very first start process. It maybe happen in the factory, so it will make sure the bootloader and the firmware is absolutely clean. And then the procedure restores the hash value into the CPU chip to make sure the bootloader will be never modified. Or if it is modified, the procedure will detect the modification and helps the next steps to avoid the propagation of the worm. So, and considering your assumptions such as the vendors share or use the open source code, but if we just consider the binary form of the firmware, so the hash value is no matter it will change or it will not be changed, it will store the hash value at the very beginning first time in the CPU. So it's maybe can solve your question. Thank you. Okay, and that's all. Thank you very much. Cheers.